Imagine living a life um, completely free from worry.
That sounds pretty nice right about now.
Right. And I mean, utterly, completely unrestrained, like a state of existence where you just aren't trying to force anything.
No forcing, no anxiety about tomorrow.
Exactly. No regretting yesterday either.
Mhm.
You just, you allow absolutely everything to happen right through you, kind of like wine through an open window.
Zero friction.
Hero.
Yeah.
So, does that sound appealing to you? Well, according to a 2020 essay by an author named Su Feng, this isn't just some, unattainable fantasy. It's actually the literal definition of what he calls a celestial being.
It's such a wild concept because it takes this really universal human exhaustion, like our constant desire to just put the heavy backpack down, and it elevates it into this vast cosmological state of being.
Yeah, it really does.
The text we're digging into today is called You Are a Celestial Being When Your Mind Abides Nowhere, and it is a deeply curious document.
It's out there.
Oh, it really is. It takes ancient Eastern philosophies, things like non-attachment, and it filters them through this highly specific, almost sci-fi framework.
Right.
We're talking parallel worlds and, multidimensional spaces.
And just to set the stage for you listening, we are acting as impartial guides through this whole framework today.
Yeah.
Our mission on this deep dive isn't to, endorse the specific cosmology or the religious views in the text.
Yeah, it's just analyzing the mechanics of it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
because it offers a very unusual roadmap to total psychological detachment. And
Yeah.
honestly, it builds up to this surprisingly sharp critique of modern internet spirituality that feels incredibly relevant right now.
The contrast is really what makes the text so compelling. I mean, you have this sweeping, almost overwhelming cosmic vision on one hand,
Yeah.
and then on the other hand, this very grounded, almost cynical view of how people are out there seeking enlightenment online. It basically asks us to look at how we process desire and reality when we are just constantly bombarded by information.
So, to understand the critique, I feel like we first have to understand the destination he's talking about.
We do.
The author claims that the most unrestrained lives in existence belong to these celestial beings. And he says they inhabit, quote, 20 parallel worlds of 36-dimensional space.
36 dimensions. It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. He describes them as leaving things to fate, filling love in mountains and rivers, spreading affection everywhere, and just taking things as they are. But the line that really stuck with me is that they never do anything, yet allow all things to happen through them.
It's a beautiful image.
It is, but I mean, I struggle to visualize what living in 36 dimensions actually means in a practical sense. Like, what does that look like?
Well, if we look at how the author uses dimensional space throughout the essay, it's not purely astrophysics.
Okay.
It's more like a scaling of consciousness. In our regular three-dimensional world, we're constrained, right? By time, physical limits, binary choices.
Just constant limitations.
Exactly. We experience friction because we're constantly bumping into those limits. So a 36-dimensional space in this particular cosmology represents a state of awareness where all those constraints just vanish.
Oh, I see.
The celestial being isn't, actively managing reality or fighting against it. They essentially become a seamless conduit for it.
My mind immediately goes to this analogy of like floating down a rushing river without a paddle.
Right, just letting the current take you.
Yeah. You completely trust the river to take you exactly where you need to go, trusting you won't hit any rocks. But I kind of have to push back on the practicality of that for anyone listening to this deep dive right now.
Sure?
We live in a hyper-scheduled, deeply stressed-out world.
Yeah.
You've got deadlines, family obligations, rent. If I just, let things happen through me at work tomorrow without trying to steer the boat at all, I'm going to get fired.
You definitely would.
Passivity just seems like a recipe for total disaster in the real world.
Well, see, that assumes the text is advocating for pure passivity, which is actually a really common misinterpretation of this kind of philosophy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. What's fascinating here is how the author connects this cosmic state to the ancient Taoist concept of wu-wei.
Okay, wu-wei.
Right, which is often translated as non-action or effortless action.
Oh.
The author is applying wu-wei on this multidimensional scale, but it definitely doesn't mean just sitting on your couch doing nothing while your life falls apart.
So you still have to do the laundry.
You still do the laundry. The text explicitly notes that these beings have, quote, no stubbornness, no obstructions, no stagnation.
Okay, so the action is still happening, but the stubbornness is gone.
Exactly. Think about your workday. The exhaustion you feel usually isn't from the physical act of typing on a keyboard or sitting in a chair, right?
No, absolutely not. It's the mental drain.
Right. The friction is your internal resistance. It's
Yeah.
the stubbornness of wishing you were somewhere else or stressing over some outcome you literally can't control.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the celestial state eliminates that internal resistance. You're still doing the job, but there's no obstruction between you and the reality of the present moment.
Wow, that totally reframes the exhaustion we all feel. It's the internal stubbornness that burns us out, not necessarily the task itself.
Precisely.
But the author makes it really clear that mortals can't just, wake up on a Tuesday, decide to drop their stubbornness, and instantly enter that 36-dimensional flow state.
No, definitely not.
There is a very intense onboarding process for regular humans to even begin approaching this.
Yeah, the foundational work is demanding. The text doesn't pretend this is like some quick weekend mindfulness retreat. It requires a complete structural overhaul of how a person relates to the world.
Right. He lays out these three fundamental methods for a mortal to begin the transition. First, they have to repay all their debts and their worldly ties and separate from the secular world.
That's a huge step just on its own.
It's massive. And then second, they need to create ties with celestials and accumulate merits and virtues. And third, they have to transform human affection into celestial affection, human nature into celestial nature, and the human world into the celestial world.
It's asking for a total reorientation of your entire life trajectory.
Which, again, brings me back to my practical dilemma. How does someone realistically end worldly ties if they're paying a 30-year mortgage or, raising a toddler?
Right.
In our society, your worldly ties literally are your entire life. It sounds like the text is demanding this deep asceticism, like you have to abandon your family and move to a cave in the woods.
The text certainly points toward ascetic ideals, I won't deny that. But if we examine the underlying logic of those three methods, the author is describing a total paradigm shift. It's essentially about migrating your internal operating system.
An OS update for your soul.
Yeah, exactly. Because our default human logic is largely transactional and tribal. We love our family specifically because they are our family.
Right.
We work specifically to pay our mortgage. We operate on cause, effect, and exclusive attachment.
I mean, our entire society is built on those exclusive attachments. It's how everything functions.
But a celestial logic operates entirely differently. It runs on universal affection rather than exclusive familial affection. So when he says you have to transform human nature into celestial nature, it means updating that internal OS.
So you don't necessarily have to move to a cave.
Not necessarily. Even if you are physically still paying the mortgage or raising the child, the internal mechanism driving you is no longer earthly attachment. You're operating within the world, but your internal logic has been rewritten. You care for the child not just out of biological attachment, but out of a universal celestial duty to all life.
Okay, migrating the operating system is a really helpful way to picture it. But doing those three things, repaying debts, building merits, shifting to this universal logic, he says that's only the preliminary work.
Right, that's just the prep.
The true core of this transformation is found in the title of the essay itself. You are a celestial being when your mind abides nowhere.
Abiding nowhere. Yeah, this is where the philosophy moves from challenging to radically, almost terrifyingly empty.
Terrifyingly empty is right.
It requires stripping away everything that grounds human identity.
The author actually introduces this concept using a quote from Shakyamuni Buddha. The quote basically tells us that our mind should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or dharma.
Right.
And just to clarify that term for a second, dharma in this context generally refers to the fundamental laws, phenomena, or teachings of reality. The author explains that abiding nowhere means keeping an empty mind until nothing exists, absolutely no attachment to any physical sensation or mental concept.
It's a very classical Buddhist concept of emptiness, but the author expands on it with an inventory that leaves absolutely no wiggle room for the reader.
The sheer volume of things the author says you must empty from your heart is staggering.
It goes on and on.
It really does. He says you have to harbor no relative, no enemy, no country, no ethnicity, no money, no goal, no family, no fame, no wealth, no position, no health or longevity.
Just sweeping everything out.
And perhaps the most relatable sacrifice for me, no delicious food.
Notice how indiscriminate that clearing of the house is, though.
Yeah, that's exactly what caught my attention.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just the negative emotions. Like most spiritual texts tell you to let go of your enemies, your anger, or your fear of failure.
Sure, the bad stuff.
But this text demands you let go of universally valued things. Your country, your family, your literal health. Okay, let's unpack this a bit, because it reminds me of a digital detox taken to the absolute extreme.
What do you mean?
Well, it's like realizing your phone apps are distracting you, so you delete the apps. But then the author says, no, you actually have to delete the phone's operating system itself until you just have a blank piece of glass in your hand.
That's a great analogy.
Because the list doesn't stop at physical things. You also have to let go of religion, political parties, laws, regulations, precepts, Buddhas, celestials, heaven, hell, temples, and get this, even self-refinement and self-improvement itself.
That inclusion of self-improvement is crucial. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what the author is diagnosing here is the trap of spiritual materialism.
Spiritual materialism.
Yeah, it's a very common pitfall. People realize that material attachments like money, fame, the fancy new car are causing them suffering, so they drop them.
They sell the car.
They sell the car. But the human ego is incredibly resilient. It simply replaces the material attachments with spiritual ones.
Ah, so they trade a gold chain for a wooden mala, but it's still a chain.
Exactly. The ego just puts on a monk's robe. Suddenly, a person becomes obsessed with attaining magical powers, or they rigidly adhere to religious dogma, or they burn with this intense desire to secure a spot in heaven.
Right, they're still craving something.
They are still desiring, they've just changed the currency. By demanding that you let go of religion, temples, Buddhas, and the very concept of self-improvement, the text is stating that a spiritual cage is still a cage.
Wow.
To abide nowhere means literally nowhere, not even in the comfort of a spiritual identity.
A spiritual cage is still a cage. That frames the problem differently, but it still leaves this lingering doubt for me. Is this level of radical emptiness actually achievable for a human being?
It's a fair question.
Letting go of the desire to let go. It feels like a paradox that would just break your brain. Yet the text treats this not as some hypothetical ideal, but as an active, ongoing reality.
Right. The author grounds these cosmic goals in very specific claims about reality, arguing that there are places and people already succeeding at this right now.
Yeah, he mentions these realms like the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium Islands continent.
Which function in the text as these visionary utopias or higher dimensional realities where this friction-free life is just the norm.
But he also points to our reality, claiming that many quote-unquote Chinuan celestials, which refers to followers or practitioners within this specific philosophical framework, have basically already achieved this state.
Right.
And to help others join them, he provides this highly curated, highly syncretic reading list.
Syncretism is definitely a hallmark of this text. It doesn't rely on a single tradition at all, but instead weaves together several major worldviews into a singular methodology.
And the curriculum is massive. The author says you need to listen to the teachings of Jesus Christ, Buddha Shakyamuni, Immortal Lozi, Master Bodhidharma, and Deiform Buddha.
And Deiform Buddha in this context seems to be a synthesized divine figure or a specific manifestation of the ultimate divine within the author's own cosmology.
Right. And then the required reading includes the 4 Christian Gospels, the Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra, the Tao Te Ching, the Dharma Patriarch's Bloodline Theory, and the author's own Chanyuan corpus and Sufing corpus. Why blend all these seemingly contradictory traditions together like this?
Well, if the ultimate goal is to avoid abiding in any single dogma, then synthesizing all these texts actually makes logical sense.
Because you can't get stuck on just one.
Exactly. Jesus teaches universal love. Laozi teaches wu wei, or effortless action. Buddha teaches the emptiness of form. By combining them, the author attempts to strip away the dogmatic exclusivity of any one religion and extract this universal thread of detachment.
So you aren't supposed to worship the texts.
No, you are supposed to use them to break your own programming.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But amidst all this heavy, dense spiritual instruction, there is this very sudden, bizarre moment in the text.
Oh, the parenthetical.
Yes. Right after assigning this massive reading list, the author drops in this quirky little parenthetical note that literally says, if you cannot do them this way, then I can marry you.
It's such a jarring tonal shift, isn't it?
I had to read it twice.
Yeah.
Like, what's...
It really could be interpreted in a few ways. Maybe it's a metaphor for deep spiritual union with the teacher. Or perhaps it's just a moment of levity to undercut the intense seriousness of the preceding paragraphs. Regardless, it certainly breaks the formal rhythm of the essay.
It definitely caught me off guard.
Ugh.
But right after that tonal break, the essay violently pivots.
It really does.
It moves from ancient sutras and multidimensional cosmologies straight into a fierce, pointed critique of the modern internet age. And honestly, this might be the most relatable part of the entire text.
Absolutely.
He warns the reader about the sheer volume of, quote, chicken soup for the sole articles on the web, calling them elusive thinking.
He is diagnosing the modern spiritual marketplace, particularly how it operates online, as an active hazard to enlightenment.
He practically dares the reader. He's like, go ahead, read the articles of these big gods and great masters of the web every day. Spend your money and your lifetime studying their magical arts.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back.
He predicts that when you're old and looking back from your deathbed, you'll realize you just spent your life spinning around in one spot. And the phrase he uses for this is the cave of the silken web.
The cave of the silken web is a brilliant metaphor for algorithmic internet culture.
Isn't it?
Think about it. You feel like you are traveling far and wide, exploring countless philosophies and spiritual ideas on your feed, but you are actually caught in a sticky algorithmic web.
Wow, yeah.
You're just being fed content, spinning in circles, and having your attention and resources slowly drained by these spiritual influencers.
Drained is definitely the operative word there because he specifically targets the commercialization of spirituality, like paying money to learn magical arts or secret techniques.
Right?
He argues that in our current degenerating time, gods, demons, and monsters are all out looking for descendants, and the monsters often have the most attractive, shiny methods.
Always the shiny ones.
Always. So to protect the reader, he provides a set of red flags for identifying these traps, and these red flags completely subvert how we normally evaluate success.
They require us to ignore almost every metric we've been taught to trust in the digital age.
Normally, we think that if a lot of people are flocking to a teacher, that teacher must have figured something out. But the author says the exact opposite.
He really goes against the grain here.
He says, where there is hustling and bustling, disasters will gather. Where there are more disciples, the place is more problematic.
Right.
And places where people practice magical arts. He dismisses those as places where paranoid people possessed by devils feel really good about themselves while completely losing their true nature. Here's where it gets really interesting. He equates popularity with danger.
This raises an important question about our modern epistemology, how we measure truth today.
Okay.
In our culture, virality is the ultimate metric of value. Crowds, follower counts, engagement metrics, that's how we decide who is worth our attention.
Definitely. If it has 1 million views, it must be important.
Right. But the author flips that completely on its head. In this framework, a massive following isn't proof of enlightenment, it's a massive red flag. If thousands of disciples are flocking to a master, the text suggests that master is likely dealing in illusion, feeding the ego, or worse, trapping people in that silken web.
Hustle and bustle means disaster. Looking at the chaotic state of internet discourse right now, that might be the most grounded, practical advice in the whole essay.
I tend to agree.
So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? We have the 36 dimensions, the prerequisites for migrating your internal OS, the radical emptiness of abiding nowhere, and this fierce warning about the internet's silken web. What is the ultimate conclusion of this roadmap?
The conclusion is a demand for a radical bypass.
A bypass.
Yes. The text urges the seeker to bypass the noisy internet gurus, bypass the crowded temples, bypass the obsession with self-improvement, and go straight to the absolute foundation.
Cut out the middleman.
Precisely. The author explicitly says you must, quote, go straight to the source, the greatest creator, and be a celestial. The greatest creator being the text's term for the ultimate unnameable origin of all things.
Right.
And the only mechanism for connecting with that source is to achieve total, unyielding emptiness, abiding the mind nowhere.
Stripping the operating system down to the absolute studs.
Yep.
Even if you, the listener, aren't aiming to ascend to a 36-dimensional parallel world, or you don't buy into the specific cosmology of the Elysium Islands, there is an incredibly potent psychological tool buried in this text. It's the concept of radical detachment as a defense mechanism against modern life.
It's a way of inoculating yourself against the constant demands for your attention.
Exactly. Think about that cave of the silken web. Turning off the noise, ignoring the crowded online gurus promising a quick fix for your anxiety, and just practicing the art of emptying your mind of expectations.
And emptying your mind of the constant need to acquire the next spiritual badge of honor, too.
Right. Reframing peace not as something you buy or achieve, but as the natural state that remains when you simply stop trying to acquire things.
It requires an immense amount of discipline, though, to choose emptiness in a world that literally profits from your constant desire.
It really does. But I want to leave you with a final paradox to chew on today.
Yeah.
one that builds on everything we've explored but highlights the ultimate friction of this entire philosophy.
Okay, let's hear it.
If the absolute goal is to want nothing, no health, no religion, no rules, no enlightenment, and to possess a mind that abides absolutely nowhere,
Right.
how do you take the very first step on this path without violating the rule? If you actively desire to become a celestial, aren't you already failing to abide your mind nowhere? How do you want nothing without wanting it?